Welcome to Make It Last, helping you keep your legal ducks in a row and your nest egg secure with your host, Victor Medina, an estate planning and elder law attorney and certified financial planner.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Make It Last. I am Victor Medina. I am an estate planning and elder law attorney and a certified financial planner, and now I am a retirement income certified professional. I'm dangerous. Watch out. Welcome back to the show. I am so happy that you've joined us. It is an unusual show for me today, in large part because I've got my son downstairs as I'm recording this. It is the beginning of his preschool, and they don't have early drop-off yet, so it means that I've got him downstairs watching Netflix, and who knows what's going to happen. He could come bursting in here at any moment and drop his dulcet tones on our show. In any event, I'm excited also because a contract has been renewed with the radio show. So if you are listening on WCTC 1450 AM, I will be on here for at least another half a year. Contract negotiations were pretty tough. I said I'd like to continue. They said we'd like you to continue, and that was the end of the contract negotiations. So guess it wasn't that difficult after all. But I am excited. I'm having a lot of fun doing the radio show, and I hope you're having a lot of fun listening to it. You know, I do my very best here to really kind of share the knowledge that I've gained over years of experience as I've gone ahead and worked with clients, helped them put their plans in place and get in a better spot than where I found them. And that's happened a few thousand times by now. And part of what I'm trying to do with this show is really kind of share all of that knowledge with you, because I just literally can't see everyone. Even if you were really interested in working with us, there's a limited number of people that I can see on an annual basis, or in fact, over the course of my entire career. So it does make good sense to kind of spread this information around and let people know how they can just improve their financial and legal planning lives. And so this has been a lot of fun. It's going to continue to be a lot of fun. If you like what you're hearing, we do appreciate you being a listener, and you can go ahead and subscribe to the podcast by going to iTunes and searching for Make It Last. You'll see a little blue box that says Make It Last with Victor Medina. Subscribe on there. In fact, if you could leave a positive review, that would be great too, because Apple does tend to rank these shows based on the number of people who like other shows. So, yeah, it should be an interesting way of getting new listeners if they kind of search for the retirement planning stuff. In any event, this show, I am excited. We're going to talk about a continuation of a topic that we did last week. So last week we talked a little bit about retirement income planning, and I shared with you 3 different strategies. Now, if you missed that show, I'd urge you to go back to episode 23, which aired on September 16th. Happened to be my son's birthday. And if you listen to that, you'll hear about 3 different strategies. You hear about retirement income flooring, putting a floor on something, bucketing, using buckets, or systematic withdrawals. And we go into detail about that, but I wanted to take the next step in this show. And in the next 2 segments, we're going to talk a little bit about retirement failure, what it means, how it's defined, and what you can do to avoid it. So I'm going to share with you a couple of those topics. And before I do, we're going to take this first segment, talk a little bit about something that doesn't go to the kind of core demographic that listens to retirement planning, but I know that many of you are grandparents and you've got children who've got minor children, and it reminded me of the kind of planning that those individuals need to do. So I'm going to touch briefly. I had the opportunity with the help of my mom, who's going to go ahead and watch my young kids. I had the opportunity to kind of review my estate plan because with their help, my wife and I are actually going to get away for a small vacation. And we're going to travel. We're going to travel out of the country. We're going to leave the kids with my mom. And there's 2 different areas of that kind of planning that you need to pay attention to if you're the parent of minor children. Now, many of you don't know that I actually started my career focusing on planning for parents of minor children. I had this great little marketing approach. I would rent out one of those birthday rooms, packages. The one that I used to go to is West Windsor, the little gym. And what I would do is I would rent out a party, and I would encourage parents to bring their kids. The kids could go play with the staff doing gymnastics or whatever else. And I would give a presentation in the other room. And then afterwards, we would do a little pizza and cake, which was part of the package that they would give you. And then if they wanted to come and see me, they would come and see me. And I spent a lot of time giving those types of seminars on Saturday afternoons and Sunday afternoons, encouraging parents to come think about proactive planning for themselves. Because the truth of the matter is that once you start having kids, you become responsible to somebody else. And a good responsible parent thinks about what happens if they're not around. And so, there's sort of two different areas that you need to think about with that kind of planning. And one of them has to do with managing the children while you're not around. And so this isn't like a formal guardianship. Like, you're not going away anywhere. But you do need to establish some medical powers of attorney so that if the kids get injured, the people that you've left them with can make healthcare decisions for them in your absence. Now, you could be out of commission because you're in another country and unreachable, and it's an emergency situation. You could be out of commission because you were in a car accident and you passed away or became incapacitated, and the kids still need healthcare decisions made for him, for them, emergency decisions about what to do and what not to do. And so you need to think about that kind of planning because it's important to not have a legal hiccup when it comes to who can make healthcare decisions for your children. So a medical power of attorney is important, as is a grant of a temporary legal guardianship. And so you might appoint somebody to be a temporary legal guardian. Now, we use terms like children's protection plan or kids protection plan in our practice, and it encompasses that first set of documents. But the next thing you got to think about is long-term guardianship. Now, I say I'm coming up on a break here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call an audible. I'm going to come back from this break and continue the discussion on planning for parents of minor children. That'll be in the next segment, and I will leave the retirement income failure discussion for the last segment. So stick with us. This is a good topic. Everyone knows somebody who's got minor kids, and especially if you're a grandparent, this is an episode to share with them. So when we come back, I'm going to talk a little bit more about how to do planning for parents of minor children, and then we'll wrap up with the retirement income failure, or retirement planning failure, how to avoid and what to do. So stick with us when we come back on Make It Last.
As you get older, there are so many decisions to make around your legal, financial, and tax planning needs. Searching for the right people who you can trust and getting them all on the same page can be frustrating and exhausting. Turns out, now there's a better way. Medina Law Group is the only place where you can secure your total wealth with a one-stop shop for your estate, retirement, and tax planning needs. With over 15 years of experience and more financial credentials than you can shake a stick at, Victor Medina and his team offer a way to cover all of your planning needs under one roof. Whether you're concerned about getting your ducks in a row or securing your nest egg or both, Medina Law Group can give you the peace of mind you deserve to make sure you have all the angles covered with best-in-class planning. Call the experienced professionals at Medina Law Group at 609-818-0068 to learn more, including your chance to schedule a free consultation. You can also visit MedinaLawGroup.com to learn more about protecting your assets and the Medina Law Group team. For peace of mind and a solid foundation, contact Medina Law Group today.
Welcome back to Make It Last. We're talking about planning for parents of minor children. And, kind of in the first segment, I spent some time talking to you about how to deal with kind of what I would call incapacity planning. It's not really kind of long-term planning. This would be what would happen if you got into a car accident and somebody needed to make health care decisions for your children. We think about a medical power of attorney or some form of a grant of temporary short-term guardianship. And those documents are usually included in a package that I put together for my clients called a kids protection plan or a children's protection plan, depending on what I'm feeling like in the meeting. But the idea is that we try to help put together the paperwork that would protect and any kind of interruption or legal process in dealing with parents of minor kids on a kind of short-term basis. Now, this came about because, as I mentioned in the other segment, I'm going to go on vacation with my wife, one of these rare vacations that we get without the children. And so I want my mom to be able to make healthcare decisions for our kids while we're gone. And so it's important to arm her with the right legal documents in order to get that done. Now, that's on the kind of short-term basis. But when you think about planning for parents of minor children, you want to think about the long term as well. So another component of that is in putting together guardianship documents. Now, some people believe that guardianship is something that they control based on what they put in their will. And it's often eye-opening in the meetings that I have for me to explain to clients, no, in fact, it's not that governs it. Now, you can indicate your wishes about what you want to have happen, but at the end of the day, it is a judge that looks at the situation and makes decisions in the best interest of the child. And so it is up to them, that judge, to make that decision. Now, it's important for you to list out guardians because there is some deference that is paid to what the choices of the parents are, but it's not controlling. So we want to think about a few things to kind of tilt the odds in our favor. And so a couple of things that come to mind. First is a short-term guardianship, because a long-term guardianship proceeding is something that's done over months. You know, you've passed away, and then there's this court action, and a guardian is appointed. People are notified. People have the opportunity to participate. We're going to go through some of the detail of that, but really the idea is that it takes a while. So you need to have some short-term guardianship lined up, and we often provide these guardianship sort of nomination of short-term guardians as a way to smooth over the period in time in which the police show up at your house, but you're not there. There's an 18-year-old babysitter. They're not going to leave the kids with the 18-year-old babysitter or the 16-year-old babysitter. And so you want something that keeps the kids with the family. And this grant of a short-term guardianship is an important step on that. Now, the next step on that is to think about long-term guardianship. And with long-term guardianship, it's kind of a different discussion because you want to think both about naming somebody in the affirmative, like, I want this person. And you also want to think about excluding people. Now, it may not always be the person that you think that the judge is going to decide. Like in my situation, we've got two different siblings on each side of the family, and they're in different stages of their lives. Back when I first did this planning, I had one sibling that was not very well along in life. She just started out, kind of had a job. It was a good job, but didn't have a family. And if you compared her with another sibling that might have petitioned for guardianship, that sibling was married with kids, established, big house. And if you were judged without any other instructions about what you wanted to have happen, you would look at the two and you might grant guardianship over my kids to the one that was better established, when that was going to be counter to our wishes. Now, our planning is actually not that. I use that story fairly regularly in seminars because at the time it was accurate, and we've updated our planning. And so the people that we would give guardianship to are a little bit different, but they're still not the people that you would kind of commonly think of being the right folks. So it's important for a judge to hear that about who we want. So that's kind of naming them in the affirmative. The other thing that you have to think about is naming people in the negative. So one of the things that we recommend is that if there's somebody that is in your life that might come out of the woodwork to help with guardianship or raise their hand, you might want to exclude that person from guardianship, and that's done on a separate document. We do a confidential exclusion that really only sees the light of day if those people raise their hands after you're gone, and then it gives me, the lawyer, the opportunity to kind of rush in and say, no, my clients thought about that, and in fact, they don't want this person for these reasons, and we kind of list those reasons out. And the confidential exclusion really goes to kind of two different kinds of people. There are the well-meaning but hard-headed folks. You know who they are in your life. They mean well, but they're just not going to understand that you don't want them to be your child's guardian. So well-meaning but hard-headed, they should go on the confidential exclusion list. The next folks that should go on the confidential exclusion list are the cockroaches that come out of the woodwork when there's a little bit of money. Because if you've done good planning, probably one of the things that you have is some decent term life insurance. It's the inexpensive kind, and it's for catastrophic planning. You might have $1, $2, $3 million worth of life insurance that's being left for the benefit of your children. Well, with that much money at play and the ability to manage that much money, you could expect that there would be people really interested in watching over your kids if they can get access to that money. So those kind of folks we want to put on the confidential exclusion list, and you know who they are. I'm looking at you. Yes, you. You know who they are. Put them on the list and take them out of the running by putting them on the confidential exclusion list. Now, those are the guardians. Often, we recommend separating out the decisions about the kids from the decisions about the money. Now, as you've grown to learn and appreciate, we're big on trusts in our law firm. We think that they are the best planning tool for our clients. We use them even for parents of minor children who may not have a ton of assets, but who might come into assets because this life insurance might pay out for the benefit of their kids. And so in that scenario, I don't want the money going directly to the kids. If you name your kids as your contingent life insurance beneficiaries and they are minors, that money does not get paid out to them. It gets paid out to a court-managed trust. Many of my clients don't want anything to do with that. They would prefer a private management of those monies. And so we are able to do that if we pay them into the trust, and then we select who's in charge of the trust. And so if you have somebody who might be great with the kids and be a great guardian, they might not be the right person to hold on to the money. And in fact, you might want some separation between those folks, because you may want them to not be with their hand on the spigot, turning on and off the flow of money. Now, I get some families that are very close, and they're very happy to have the same person do those jobs. I counsel best I can, let them know what the risks are, and if they make a decision to do that, fine, that's okay. But more often than not, the clients that we have, they will separate them out. They will separate out those responsibilities. And it's not a bad thing to do, so that you name an independent trustee who's going to watch over that money. By the way, they probably will watch over that money longer than they're going to need a guardian, because I don't know any family that thinks that their child is the right person to manage an inheritance at 18 years old of a couple $1 million. So you might extend that out a little bit longer to age 25, age 30, and still keep that trustee going, even though there's no legal need for guardianship because they're over the age of 18. And then we think about protections down the line from that, about divorce and creditor protection. We can talk about those in future shows. So, show took a little different turn today. Spent a little bit more time on planning for parents of minor children. So if you're listening to this because it's a retirement show and you've got grandkids, you have children who have minor children, share the show with them and encourage them to evaluate their estate plan based on the ability to not have any interruption about who can manage the kids if they're incapacitated or if they're away on vacation, and also this kind of catastrophic planning to make sure that if they die young and early and leave these kids behind, we've done the right kind of planning to name guardians and to name trustees over that money going forward. Now, when we come back, what I promised you in the beginning of the show, we'll get to, which is retirement planning failure, how it's defined, and how to avoid it. Stick with me when we come back on Make It Last. Thanks.
Just about every working American stays focused on the ultimate goal, retirement. But planning for it can come with a lot of uncertainty. Do I have adequate savings? Have I invested enough? Have I invested too much? What's the right thing to do? If you're one of the millions of Americans asking these questions, let financial expert Victor Medina help you make sense of it all. Victor is a certified financial planner and retirement income specialist who can help you set the strategy with a unique planning process that centers on you. By taking an in-depth look at your retirement timeline, goals you want to achieve, and what you have saved, Victor and his staff can help you figure out how to get the most out of retirement. Retirement is the biggest financial decision you will make. Putting the right plan in place and sticking to it is the smartest decision anyone can ever make. To learn more, visit Private Client Capital Group online at privateclientcapitalgroup.com and start down the path of securing your total wealth today.
Everybody, welcome back to Make It Last. We've been talking about how to do planning for parents of minor children. When I opened the show, I teased you about being able to cover retirement failure, how to define it, what it means, and how to avoid it. And now we finally get to it at the end of the show. So thanks for sticking with us. So, when people think about retirement, academics really, when they think about failure, the discussion on failure can be kind of confusing because there are three different levels of failure. One level has to do with a loss of a sort of market funded standard of living. Okay. The next one has to do with a standard of living below a floor. Okay. And then there's bankruptcy. So when you think about failure in there, there's really 3 degrees. And when retirement planners like me, talk about success on planning, most of the time we're talking about success as to maintaining a market-funded standard of living. Now, market-funded standard of living means that the performance of your retirement assets, whether or not you have guaranteed income in the form of annuity or where your pensions come in, or Social Security, put aside the actual strategy, which we talked about the last time. But regardless of what strategy you're using, that your assets keep up to a standard of living. Now, if you think about this in terms of the flooring strategy that we talked about last week, the flooring strategy had a sort of a mandatory expense component and a discretionary expense component. And the idea there is that you would be meeting both of these if you are at your market-funded standard of living. Okay. If you fall below that, if there's a failure sort of below that, there is some form of a minimum standard of living or a floor. So the standard of living, I keep using that term. Maybe we ought to define it. The standard of living is sort of the level of wealth, comfort, material goods, necessities available to your socioeconomic class in your area, right? So because by geographic area, it changes. It's this minimum level of necessities, that are essential to maintaining you in your customary status or circumstances. And those standard of livings are each, they're discrete, they're independent, in the sense that you cannot meet one and still meet the standard floor. And while that might technically be a failure in terms of your retirement planning, it's not a failure that is catastrophic. So when retirement writers and researchers, the academics, use the term standard of living in the way that it kind of refers to their planning, they're using it in a little bit more specific way, which is the cost of purchasing those comforts and material goods. So you might say that a household that has adequate retirement assets to fund a $50,000 annual standard of living, what they really mean is that household can enjoy whatever standard of living 50,000 of years can purchase. When you lose the standard of living, you fall below these various levels. So we use the term flooring or a floor, and that's the amount of safe income available. So if you lose the floor and the on there, that floor can be filled with assets and financial products, investment strategies, with little to no market risk. So you're looking at like fixed annuities, fixed index annuities, with no rider fees, preferably. Treasury inflation protected bond ladders or securities, Social Security benefits. So if you combine those together, those are ways of putting together a floor. And the theory is that the retiree will be able to maintain some standard of living, that is the floor, in the event that there's a disastrous investment result in the portfolio that's meant to be the discretionary side. Now, this is easy to visualize because nearly all Americans are eligible for Social Security benefits. Okay, so it means that almost everyone has some amount of a floor, but that level of floor can vary greatly, right? So wealthier households are able to build up a floor that completely protects their standard of living regardless of investment results, while other floors may only have Social Security benefits and very little other resources. So the higher your floor, the less that market losses will harm your standard of living. The way to think about it is your floor is your insurance, and the more wealth that you have, the more insurance you can afford. So if you lose a standard of living below the floor on that, right, that's a failure in your planning, but not one sufficient to trigger a bankruptcy. Remember, we talked about 3, like a loss of market-funded standard of living, a loss of a floor standard of living, and then you have your bankruptcy level. And so in your failures, if you fall below the standard of living that's the floor, there's a deterioration that is just shy of bankruptcy. And you can have that happen a couple of ways. For instance, your pension plan might fail. Okay. Your assets weren't sufficiently protected in the floor scenario. You used a systematic withdrawal method rather than securing the floor with guarantees like Social Security or fixed index annuities or something similar. So if you had that, your investments fail you and your strategy fail you, that could cause you to fall underneath it. The next reason you might fall underneath it is you can have unexpected expenses. So think about this as a strategy. You created a floor, but that was to a certain level of expenses. If you create that floor, that doesn't guarantee that your expenses will always be at that level. So you can do things to change that. Maybe you moved to a more expensive area. So the other way to do is you move to a less expensive area, and that's a way to kind of lower what those expenses are. And then the real ruin, obviously, is bankruptcy. And that's when you have a complete portfolio depletion. And there are some assets that are protected in there. Generally, retirement accounts that are protected by ERISA are judgment proof for the individual. Some states protect annuities that are owned by a resident of that state. So you have to check the bankruptcy laws in your state to figure out which is which. And those are 3 different areas that you can have failures. Now, I promised you that we would lead to how to protect them. And the way that you protect them is by putting a strategy in place to guarantee those floors and to guarantee the expenses in there. So when you start to fix your expenses, let's say you get rid of your home and mortgage expense, or you cover long-term care expense, or you fund health insurance. Once you fix those expenses and then get an investment strategy that meets those guarantees on it, and you're looking at Social Security, pension, fixed index annuities, bond ladders, things like that, then you will help avoid that. And again, the more wealth you have, the more you can get your floor up to the market funded level of standard of living and not just the bottom floor for standard of living. So we went through that pretty quickly. I think that the lesson to take out of this is A, there are more academic strategies involved beyond just to take money out of the account. You got to think about it a little bit more. And B, working with somebody that focuses in that area will help increase your level of success. You want to be with somebody that can think about retirement income and retirement planning, failures and successes as sort of the deliberate aim of their practice, what they do, because they're going to have more of these strategies available, and they're going to have a little bit more of that education that's available. All right, great. So great show for this week. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you liked what you heard, rate it highly on iTunes, share it with your friends. This has been a great episode to share if you've got parents of minor children somewhere in your life, like you've got grandkids or you've got people that you know that could benefit from listening to this. And I want to thank you all for joining us, and we're going to be around, as I announced earlier, so we're going to keep this going. We can't wait to talk to you again next Saturday, where we're going to help you keep your legal ducks in a row and your financial nest egg secure. This has been Make It Last with Victor Medina. See you next Saturday.
The foregoing content reflects the opinions of Medina Law Group, LLC and Private Client Capital Group, LLC. and is subject to change at any time without notice. Content provided herein is for informational purposes only and should not be used or construed as investment or legal advice or a recommendation regarding the purchase or sale of any security or to follow any legal strategy. There is no guarantee that the strategies, statements, opinions, or forecasts provided herein will prove to be correct. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Indices are not available for direct investment. Any investor who attempts to mimic the performance of an index would incur fees and expenses which would reduce returns. All investing involves risk, including the potential for loss of principal. There's no guarantee that any investment plan or strategy will be successful. We recommend that you consult with a professional dedicated to your needs.